Hey Rebels, my name is Matthew Barton, and I'm the host of the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. There's an issue burning within the craft beer scene in Saskatchewan, and it's the direct result of a petition that has garnered thousands of signatures in support of change. And that issue is the craft beer production levy. Today's guest is the person behind the petition and a huge supporter of the local craft beer scene. Her name is Alysia Johnson. I'm here to ask her about why she started the petition and what's coming up next. So let's get into it. Alysia, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, just kind of enjoying a slow return to the new normal, I guess.
So let's start at the very beginning. How did this petition come to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a fan of craft beer and relatively new in that. Like a lot of people in the province, I think I kind of started to turn my attention and get on board just in the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. And when COVID hit, I thought that it was kind of an interesting, challenging time for a lot of us. But, I wanted to bring together the support local crowd. And, I had heard some rumblings in the craft beer community about the production levy. And it was just one of those things that just kind of fascinated me right off the hop, because anybody who knows, my politics in any way knows that I'm normally in a more aggressive tax camp, as kind of a natural price of having, like a society. But if you can convince me that there's a certain tax that just doesn't make any sense, and I agree with that, then chances are it's kind of a dumb tax. So I did a bit of research about it, and I listened to what people had to say, and the natural conclusion was just to, draw a bit of attention to it, do a bit of grassroots kind of advocacy. And yeah, so far it's gotten quite a bit of attention. So I'm just going to run with it.
I have a lot of my own opinions about the production levy, but from your perspective, how does it affect brewers or consumers?
Yeah, well, I can probably speak more as a consumer. I don't have any stock in any breweries. So there, people like Mark, I listened to your last show, they can do a better side, I think, explaining what it really means to them. But as a consumer, craft beer has kind of changed my relationship with, I would say with alcohol. 10 years ago, if I wanted to go out and have a couple drinks, I was doing it just, to have a couple drinks, and, that was that. But I think craft beer helps you appreciate the art. And, it's a different experience, right? And I would really like to see that flourish, and I would like to see variety, and I would like to see more breweries pop up. There is that kind of tourism element, and it is a bit of an art. So the more that we can kind of appreciate that, I think the richer we are as a province for having that.
I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a moment, but what I think you're talking about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is mindful consumption. It's it's something that I've kind of thought about with like ice cream and cheese and other foods, and craft beer is one of those things, and even coffee. I think mindful consumption of coffee rather than just getting a burnt ashy piece of garbage and throwing in a double so you don't have to taste it.
It's funny you bring up coffee, because that would be my next example. Again, years ago, coffee did a particular job, and that job was to wake me up and and get me going in the universe. And honestly, you probably, you wouldn't want to talk to me before my first cup of coffee in the morning. So it had a job to do, but the older that I get and more we've got, people roasting right here in the city, it's another one of those things where it's like now I consume mindfully to enjoy the product and experience something that's better than what I can get at Walmart. So definitely mindful consumption. You really, kind of hit the nail on the head with that.
There's something really special about drinking coffee that is brewed from beans that are fresh and not freeze dried. It pops. There's more nuance. There's a character, personality.
Yeah. And it's almost become a bit of a gift that I send to other family members. Like I've got family all over the US and different, parts of North America. And it's just one of those things now that I think we're becoming more mindful as consumers, and the more variety and all of that, the better.
Where do you think this petition will go?
Well, as of right now, we're pretty close to 3,000 signatures. But it's not about the number of signatures. Like at the end of the day, if there were 5,000 people that agreed with me or 10,000 people that agreed with me, it doesn't really change my stance or validate how I feel about the production levy in any meaningful way. The numbers are just the numbers. But I think that the greater discussion is, what is the value in keeping an industry, keeping their foot on the brake, as opposed to just kind of gassing it up and letting her go. On your last show, when I listened to Mark talk about the potential for, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said, this could be a $200 million industry, right? It just feels woefully short-sighted to be kind of arguing about, the pennies and missing the bigger picture, So I guess to bring it back to your question, where do I see it going? Well, I don't bring it up to cause a stir or to cause a ruckus. I'm not here to give anybody grief. I just want people thinking about smart policy and long-term strategy, and where do we want craft beer to go in Saskatchewan? Do we want to kind of lead the way in growth on that, or do we just want to kind of hang at the back of the pack as far as other provinces are concerned?
You talked about how your consciousness for beer came around in about the last 5 years. And I would say that's kind of where, if I was a beer historian for Saskatchewan, would say that's when the current wave of craft beer exploded, when those policy changes came out and people realized, oh, we can make a craft brewery, we can make a business of it, and just get out of our way and let us do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what kickstarted the last 5 years.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not unique to, the last 5 years being kind of when my eyes were open personally. I think that's most of the consumers in the province right now. It's just, just a guess. But yeah, I mean, this is the beginning of it. And that's kind of the beautiful thing. And I think that if you look at it from an optimistic perspective of opportunity, if I were a decision maker or looking at the policies that, affect this industry, I would definitely, have some things to ask myself about, the vision and the strategy for the future. So that's really, again, it's not about how many people signed the petition. It's really just about having that conversation and kind of laying the groundwork for strategic thinking.
One of the things that I like to circle back to is you mentioned you're American.
Yes.
My wife, she's American. She's from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I also like to point out that personal anecdotes help kind of give perspective for the beer industry. And when I was dating her, she took me out to after work drinks with her coworkers. And this is out in Wisconsin. And she's like, you should buy everybody around. And I'm like, I'm a student at the time. I'm broke. I'm like, I can't afford to buy this table around. That's hundreds of dollars, you know, because in my mind, I'm thinking Saskatchewan prices. So finally she like twists my arm and I get up there and I throw down like $120 in US on the bar. And the bartender looks at me like I'm insane.
Yeah.
And slides back $100, takes the 20 and then provides us a round of beers for like 15 people.
Yeah.
And we weren't drinking garbage.
Right.
And she was like, well, how much did you think it would cost? I'm like, how much it costs at home?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think about it that way. If you travel and leave Saskatchewan, you can see how different the craft beer scene is elsewhere and what it costs consumers and how our perceptions are kind of warped because we're just here. And if you don't leave, you'd never know it was any different.
Yeah. I mean, perspective is everything. But, you know, I would even say beyond that, one of the things I noticed when I moved to the province was that, you know, I hate to bring it up. I don't want to sound like I'm getting up on a soapbox, but, you know, Saskatchewan is massive. I mean, when we're talking comparisons to states, you know, growing up just outside of Pittsburgh, you know, about under an hour outside of the city, it was a big deal to drive into the city. You know, it was, if you had a friend that wanted to meet up 4 hours away, that seemed nuts, you know. and to think of all of the cities that I could be in within, you know, 10 hours of going in any direction. You know, Chicago, almost in New York, you know, way past the capital. Just, I mean, right. And it takes a lot of freaking grit to make things work. Like, you know, if you want to open up a business and you want to reach all of the customers in Saskatchewan, like, good freaking luck. You know what I mean? To have a market with 1 million people, you know, interested in your product, I mean, that's you know, that's an undertaking, right? So we've got a bit of an uphill battle just because we're so damn spread out, you know, and you know, so I really feel for these businesses, and I'm not just talking about people that brew beer, like, you know, people that make any kind of product and want to get it to market here. That's a freaking challenge, and I feel for them. And that's why I think we have to be that much more community minded. You know, we have to, we kind of have to really step up as consumers to support Saskatchewan business because, you know, yeah, it seems like a lot of work, Kate.
That I feel like I've had this conversation a couple times before, but with farmers, where they said, if I can ship my grain and it only has to travel a couple miles versus across an ocean, I make that much more profit and my product is that much fresher and better. And why not keep it local if we can?
Yeah. Well, and that freshness point is something else that, you know, I'm sure you've kind of heard the story, like we're kind of on the same, you know, groups on Facebook or whatever, but you know, I had an experience not too long ago that really drove the whole freshness concept home for me. Typically, I check the dates on the bottoms of cans, and in this particular instance, the restrictions were kind of loosening up, and I was going to see a friend to form, you know, that kind of extended household, and it was my first time bringing beers to somebody's patio, and it, you know, it was great. So ran into the store, just started, you know, grabbing whatever. And there is a particular brewery that I hadn't gotten around to really trying their stuff. It was, you know, one of those things. And I picked up a 4-pack and, you know, we got back to their place and we cracked it. And I mean, this beer was off. Like, I don't know a lot about off beer, but it hit my stomach not great, and we had to dump them down the drain. And I was kind of thinking about it, and it's like, that's a really unfortunate thing, because if I'm not a knowledgeable consumer and, I mistakenly think it's just garbage, like who would brew this, and not realizing that the product itself was actually spoiled or oxidized or whatever, that would have been a really bad first impression for that particular craft brewer. So, when I kind of reached back out to where I purchased the product and let them know what was going on and all that, I mean, they kind of let me know that, they were concerned that there was, a bunch of these still sitting in the warehouse in SLGA. And again, back to that point about how much work you have to do in Saskatchewan to get your product to market, right? I felt bad for the brewery. Like, you guys worked hard to make this product. You're trying to get it to your consumers, and it's potentially sat in a warehouse for the last like 7 or 8 months, like the whole situation seemed really unfair to them. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but I think where I'm going with it is that, we work too damn hard to, not get products, fresh and timely and all those things.
Saskatchewan deserves nice things.
We do. We do.
So what's next?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not too sure. I mean, I'm not shy about, being an honest advocate. And the nice thing about it is, not being a paid lobbyist, I don't have to worry about, who I'm going to offend and saying what. Like, I can kind of just have these, honest conversations like we're having right now. And that's what I love. So I'm just going to kind of keep doing that and see what happens. But
can people still sign the petition?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's at change.org/SaveSKBeer. And there's a hashtag going around as well, which is just #SaveSKBeer.
That's awesome. Well, Alysia, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
Rebels. Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, be sure to join us on our brand new Facebook group page, the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. I'll include links in the show notes so you can find Alicia's petition and sign it if you're in the mood. The Saskatchewan craft beer scene is always changing, and I'm going to do my best to keep featuring all the new local beers coming out. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Untapped so you don't miss out on a single thing. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.